Good morning, students. Today, for our English literature class, let us take up the short story The Little Match Girl, written by Hans Christian Andersen. Here in this short story, I am going to first of all give you a brief synopsis of the short story and discuss something about the story in general, and then go on with the explanation of the text as displayed on your screen. So first and foremost, I want each one of you to take out your short story textbooks and also the short story workbook. Textbook as well as workbook. Open on Hans Christian Andersen's short story The Little Match Girl, and same in case of the workbook. Once you are ready, we can begin with the understanding of this short story. And make sure that you watch this video till the very end, and I expect each one of you to like and comment and subscribe. Make sure that you view the entire video till the end, otherwise you will have problems in understanding the short story. Though it is a very easy, very simple, very ordinary type of short story, it does not have too many difficult words to tackle which you may have to tackle with. It definitely has some symbolic significance, and it also has some importance with its theme. So we will be discussing, but first and foremost, please get ready with your textbooks. So if you are ready with your textbooks, on your screen you can see this is the cover of the actual book from where this story has been abridged and has been included in your syllabus. You don't have the entire text. The original text has been shortened and has been used in your treasure trove textbook for ICSE students. So this is the original book which you see on your screen. This is the cover of that book, and you can see the portrait of Hans Christian Andersen on top, and then you can see the illustration of the little match girl. She's sitting in front of a Christmas tree, and she can see that the Christmas tree is decorated with candles. So this is the book cover, and then let us have a look at Hans Christian Andersen. Once again, this is the real photograph of Hans Christian Andersen on your screen right now. It is a wonderful story which Hans Christian Andersen wrote in the year 1845. You can see it says The Little Match Girl 1845. Hans Christian Andersen himself was born in 1805 and he expired on 1875. People know him all over the world today for his wonderful fairy tales. So there is a brief description of his home and his work, and this particular short story was made into a film by Walt Disney in the year 2006. So that's about the story, and now we are going to see what more we can learn about this short story. So on your screen now, here is something which is very important. I have put in here for your understanding, and if you want, you can use a screenshot of what you see on your screen and can keep it for easy reference. In the short story The Little Match Girl, Hans Christian Andersen explores the theme of human wishes and aspiration through the transportation into the realm of dreams and hallucinations. So what do we find in this story? We see the chief protagonist is a little girl, and she is selling matches or matchsticks in matchboxes in the street. And as she goes around selling them, she does not find a single customer, and then she is cold. It's 31st December night. It's bitterly cold outside, and it's snowing, and she has lost her slippers. And then she imagines, she hallucinates, she goes into the realm of imagination and hallucination. Human mind wishes for, aspires for, craves for some warmth, some happiness which she is lacking in her life. So that is brought out in the story very graphically. So, such momentary journey into the dream world is far away from the little girl's ordinary life full of hardships. She leads a very difficult life. She has a very strict father at home who beats her and who has sent her out to sell matches. If she returns without money, then she knows she is going to get a very bad beating from her father. So she dares not go back home and she is sitting in the street. It has already started growing dark and she is cold and numb, and it's 31st December night. People are inside their homes, and the warmth of the fire inside their homes is what she does not enjoy at all, because she is outside, and through the windows she can see the happy lives of people who are away from the street at this odd hour and are enjoying, celebrating, because the following day is New Year's Eve. So Christmas has just got over and it's the festive season, it's the holiday season, but not so much for this little girl whose life is full of miseries. So let's see what is given more here. Unsuccessful in selling her matchsticks, the poor little girl was sure to be beaten by her father. So she decided not to go home and sat down on the ground on a corner created by two houses. While sitting there, she lit a match to warm herself. To her surprise, she saw a great iron stove with bright brass knob in the bright flame of the match. The stove vanished when the flame went out. The girl lit 3 more matches, one after another, and saw the visions of a roasted goose on the table, a beautiful Christmas tree, and then her grandmother who loved her most. So these are the 3 visions of the girl. These are very important in this story, the visions that the girl experiences. By then the girl realized that she would lose the vision of her grandmother when the match would go out. But she wanted her grandmother to stay there so much that she quickly lit all the rest of the matches to make sure the light stayed on. In the bright light of the matches, her granny looked more beautiful than ever before. She took her in her arms and flew up high into the sky to God. Here Andersen has used dream interpretation as a modernist literary technique of studying the psychological states of human character. The delicious roasted goose, the huge Christmas tree, and her heavenly union with her grandmother, which the girl envisioned, are merely what she wishes to have. Meaning to say, whatever aspirations, whatever were the thoughts in her mind, these thoughts were coming true through these visions. She was actually being transported into this world of imagination. Her mind was playing tricks with her. She was seeing things which were not really before her. So this is the psychological aspect of the girl which has been brought out here wonderfully by Hans Christian Andersen. So her wishes are said to be coming true. Her visions are symbolic. Now I told you there is some amount of symbolism here, though the story is written in simple, lucid style with simple English, but the symbolic significance of the story is definitely unmistakable. So you can see it is mentioned here, her visions are symbolic of her underlying hope. But alas, in this pitiless society, she got none. She does not have any hope. It has indeed artistically set in motion the plot till the denouement. What is the denouement? The falling action, the ending of the story, the ultimate finish of the story, the girl's untimely death. The fairy tale motif is another perfect device that helps the writer's attempt at translating into reality the innermost craving of the girl's union with the soul of her dear departed grandmother. A beautiful fusion of hardcore reality of sheer poverty and the imaginative wish fulfillment is given a new dimension within the stipulated periphery of the short story. The entire story is an ironic critique to the cruelty of society at large, where the little girl is denied of her basic human rights. Herein lies the significance of hallucinations in the story. So, this is what is important with regard to this short story. Now, let's read the text. I hope you are ready with the textbook. So, we begin with the text of the story as given in your textbook. The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen. It was bitterly cold. Snow was falling and darkness was gathering, for it was the last evening of the old year. Now, the last evening means 31st December, evening of the old year, because the following day would be 1st January of the new year. So, it was New Year's Eve. In the cold and gloom, a poor little girl walked. She was walking, poor little girl. She is described with a kind of pity on the part of the writer. You take pity on this girl, saying her condition. Bareheaded, her head was not covered. In that kind of cold weather, she was expected to have been wearing some kind of cap to cover her and protect her head from the cold, but she was bareheaded and barefoot. In the snow, the snowy streets, she is walking without any shoes through the streets. She had been wearing slippers, it is true, when she left home. But what good were they? They had been her mother's. So you can imagine how big they were. Now, for a small girl, if she wears her mother's slippers, naturally they will not fit. They were loose, they were much bigger. And then what happened? The little girl had lost them as she ran across the street to escape from two carriages that were being driven terribly fast. Two horse-drawn vehicles. Two carriages were passing through the street, and when she was trying to cross the street, these carriages almost came upon her. So she had to run to cross the street. And in the process, what happened? Her slippers came out of her feet. One slipper could not be found. And a boy had run off with the other, saying that it would come in very handy as a cradle some day when he had children of his own. The boy, this was definitely not going to be true, but then the boy said this. There was this urchin, there was this boy, maybe roaming around in the street, and when he saw her lose her slippers, he picked one up and ran away, mischievously. And he said his logic was that someday when he grew up and he had his family and he had children of his own, that particular slipper would be a kind of bed for them, bed for his kids. Well, it was all said with the intention of a joke. How can a slipper become a bed or a cradle? So it was not really intended to be so. It was just a joke which the boy said, or the boy cracked, as he ran off with one of her slippers. Now, if you lose one, what good is the other slipper for? So you just discard it too, because you cannot simply wear just one and walk around. So the little girl walked about the streets on her naked feet, which were red and blue with the cold. In her old apron, she carried a great many matches, and she had a packet of them in her hand as well. Nobody had bought any from her, and no one had given her a single penny all day. She crept along, shivering and hungry, the picture of misery. Poor little thing, nobody wanted to buy the matches from her. She wanted to sell at least some so that she could get some money and she could go home and give the money to her dad. Otherwise, she knew that her dad would beat her. Poor little thing. The snowflakes fell on her long golden hair, which curled so prettily about her neck. She had beautiful golden curly hair. But because her head was not covered with a cap, the snow which was falling on her hair too. But she did not think of her appearance now. Lights were shining in every window, and there was a glorious smell of roast goose in the street. For this was New Year's Eve, and she could not think of anything else. She was hungry. So when the aroma of the goose being roasted in some house in the street came to her nostrils, she could not think of anything else. So when you are hungry and you smell good food, the aroma of good food, you obviously feel hungrier. And that's what happened with her. She huddled down in a heap in a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected further out into the street than the other. But though she tucked her little legs up under her, she felt colder and colder. She did not dare to go home, for she had sold no matches and earned not a single penny. Her father would be sure to beat her. And besides, it was so cold at home, for they had nothing but the roof above them. There was no insulation. There was no protection from the weather. They were very poor, so was their home. So she did not really feel like going back home. And the wind whistled through that. So there was a lot of gap between the wall and the roof in her home. And the wind blew in through the gaps, even though the largest cracks were stuffed with straw and rags. So that was the only way they could try to make an effort to stop the wind from affecting them. But then it was not of much use. Her thin hands were almost numb with cold. If only she dared pull just one small match from the packet, strike it on the wall and warm her fingers. Now, in those days, matches were not safety matches as they are now. Nowadays, you have two portions of the matchstick powder, one on the tip of the matchstick, and the other kind of powder is on the side of the matchbox. So what do? You take out a stick and you rub it against the side of the box and you have a flame. But in the olden times, the matches were made in such a way that both the components, both the chemicals were put together on the tip of the matchstick. And the sides of the matchbox did not have any layering of chemicals. So then, if you had to strike a match, you just took out a match from the box and rubbed it against any rough surface, and it would simply flare up. The heat produced by the friction would cause both the chemicals to combine, and then there would be a flame produced. But then it was very risky, because in extreme temperatures, if suddenly temperatures went up and you kept a matchbox somewhere inside a drawer or something, it could flare up by itself and cause a fire. So eventually, the new process was implemented where the two chemicals were separated, one smeared on the side of the box, the other was kept on the tip of the matchstick, and that's how you got the new concept of matches called safety matches. So nowadays, when you buy any matchbox, you will see these words very clearly written on the box: safety matches. Safety because these match boxes would not burn into flames by themselves unless the matchstick was rubbed against the side of the box. So this is why you see this girl taking out a matchstick and rubbing it against the rough surface of a wall of a building nearby, and then she gets a flame. But if you try it out with the present day matchsticks, nothing is going to happen. So don't get confused. It used to happen in the olden times when matches were made differently. So what did she do? Well, if only she dared pull just one small match from her packet, strike it on the wall and warm her fingers. She felt this desperate urge inside her to take out at least one matchstick and ignite it so that she could get a flame and she could warm her numb fingers. She pulled one out. Scratch! How it spluttered and burned. It had a warm, bright flame like a tiny candle when she held her hand over it. But what a strange light! It seemed to the little girl as if she were sitting in front of a great iron stove with polished brass knobs and brass ornaments. The fire burned so beautifully and gave out such a lovely warmth. Oh, how wonderful that was! The child had already stretched her feet to warm them too, when out went the flame. The stove vanished, and there she sat with the burnt match in her hand. She struck another. It burned clearly, and where the light fell upon the wall, the bricks became transparent, like gauze. She could see right into the room, where a shining white cloth was spread on the table. It was covered with beautiful china. China means Chinese pottery. Okay, so she could imagine that the light of the match had thinned the wall of the building, and through the wall, which was now transparent, she could see the room inside. It was not really happening. She was hallucinating, she was imagining, she was just seeing things. It was all her imagination. So what did she see? She saw a table covered with beautiful white tablecloth, and then beautiful Chinese dishes and cutlery and pottery, and all these things were spread out on the table, and in the center of it stood a roast goose stuffed with prunes and apples, steaming deliciously. Now this is roasting an entire goose and stuffing it. That's what they do when they want to celebrate Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's Eve. Now in our country, it's not really done as much as it is done in those countries, in the Western countries. So here it was a delicious dish of an entire roasted goose stuffed with fruits, and it was steaming. The steam was coming out. It was hot, and so the aroma was spreading all around, and it was looking so delicious and smelling so delicious. Definitely, if she could have a bite, it would be really, really so delicious. And what was even more wonderful was that the goose hopped down. She imagined that the roasted goose hopped down from the table and came towards her. All this is her imagination. It's not really happening. She is imagining. So it hopped down from the dish, waddled across the floor with carving knife and fork in its back, waddled straight up to the poor child, as if to say, "Eat me if you are hungry." The food is coming towards her. Imagine a delicious dish of roasted goose is moving towards her. All she needs to do is eat it. But before she can do that, the matchstick goes out, and the vision immediately disappears. Whatever she was seeing is gone. Then out went the match, and nothing could be seen but the thick, cold wall. Once again back to reality. Imagination, hallucination, and then reality strikes again. Cold, thick wall. Just see, cold and thick. She struck another match, and suddenly she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. It was much larger and much lovelier than the one she had seen last year through the glass doors of the rich merchant's house. So she is reminded of a Christmas tree which she had seen the previous year in some rich merchant's house. Now the rich people, they have their way of celebrating Christmas, and the richer they are, the bigger the Christmas tree and more beautiful the decorations. So she had seen it only from outside, through the glass door or through the window pane. And she's reminded of that vision. In her real experience, she had seen it, and now she sees it again inside this house. 1,000 candles lit up the green branches, and gaily colored balls like those in the shop windows looked down upon her. Now in the olden days, when there was no electricity, candles were used instead of lights for illuminating and decorating Christmas trees. So this beautiful huge Christmas tree was decorated with colorful balls and candles, and they seemed to be looking down at her. See, Christmas had just got over on 25th. The tree was still there. It was 31st December, just 5 or 6 days after Christmas. So naturally, the tree was still intact. It was the holiday season and she was seeing it in her imagination. Of course, it was not real. She was just imagining it once again. This is the second vision she is having. The first vision of the stove and the dish of roasted goose. Second vision of the Christmas tree lit up with 1,000 candles before her eyes. The little girl reached forward with both hands. Then out went the match. The second match also goes out. The second vision gets over. The many candles on the Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air, and she saw that they had now turned into bright stars. As if those candles simply went up into the sky together and then became stars in the sky. She's hallucinating. It's not really happening. One of them fell, streaking the sky with light. And then she saw one of those stars which went up, the candles which went up to the sky and became stars, one of those stars suddenly falling from the sky. Nothing but a shooting star. And she said, "Now someone is dying," said the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only one who had ever been good to her, but who was now dead, had said, "Whenever a star falls, a soul goes up to God." So this is a concept which even in India also we have or we believe. A shooting star has something to do with the human soul. So there are lots of, theories in different countries with regard to shooting stars. So now she strikes the third matchstick. She struck another match on the wall. Once more there was light, and in the glow stood her old grandmother. The very moment she thought about her dead grandmother, the next vision is of her dead grandmother. She is standing right in front of her. Oh, so bright and shining, and looking so gentle, kind and loving. "Granny," cried the little girl, "oh, take me with you. I know you will disappear when the match is burnt out. You will vanish like the warm stove, the lovely roast goose, and the great glorious Christmas tree." She is now desperate. She does not want to lose out on the most favorite person of her life. The roast goose, she's hungry. So she saw that vision, understandable. The Christmas tree, the joys, the celebrations, which only the rich and the affluent can have fun or enjoy. She cannot. She can see that kind of vision also, but she can forget it. But she cannot stand the chance of losing her grandmother's vision. So she says this, "You will go away as soon as the light goes out." By now she's experienced. She knows that the matchstick does the wonder. Then she quickly struck all the rest of the matches she had in the packet, for she did not want to keep her grandmother with her. She did so want to keep her grandmother with her. She was so desperate to keep her grandmother with her. She never wanted to lose her again. The matches flared up with such a blaze that it was brighter than broad daylight. Is it really possible? Not possible. In her imagination, though, it is possible. And her old grandmother had never seemed so beautiful or so stately, so glorious before. She took the little girl in her arms and flew with her high up, oh so high, towards glory and joy. Now they knew neither cold nor hunger nor fear, for they were both with God. What happens? Grandmother actually takes her soul and goes away. Next morning. Very pathetic, very tragic scene next morning. But in the cold dawn, early morning, in the corner formed by the two houses, sat the little girl with rosy cheeks and smiling lips. She had died in a sitting position with a smile on her face. She was stiff and cold, but she was dead. Her soul had left her body. Dead, frozen to death, on the last evening of the old year. The dawn of the new year rose on the huddled figure of the girl. She was still holding the matches, and half a packet had been burnt. She was evidently trying to warm herself, people said. But no one knew what beautiful visions she had seen, and in what a blaze of glory she had entered with her old grandmother into the heavenly joy and gladness of a new year. She enters the new year with a new life. That life which is not mortal, that life which is eternal, that life which comes only after death in the next world. So that's the story. I hope I have been able to make you understand line by line. I'm sure all of you have understood. Now, I'll be uploading a few more things related to the story soon after this. First, give your like and give your comment, and also subscribe my channel. And I will be checking the views to ascertain how many of you have actually watched this video, because there should be around 36-37 views to this video, because in section A of class 10 there are about 36 or 37 of you. So I'd just like to check and see whether I have as many views or not, and I expect every one of you to see till the end. Also, would like to mention that now that we have finished with the text of the story and I have explained it to you, it's very important for each one of you to go through the workbook portion of this story thoroughly and do all the question answers. All the question answers in the workbook must be completed in your English literature homework copies. Thank you very much.